Hello, everyone. I'm the Lori DeToro, the Communications Manager for Turntide Technologies. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar discussing the state of electric and hybrid systems and the electric and hybrid industry. Before we get started, we have some housekeeping notes for you. Those haven't gone away in 2026. Before we get started, this presentation is being recorded and will be available on demand in about 48 hours for sure by Monday. We'll also be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so get those ready and please put those in the question section of GoToWebinar, not the chat section. If you have them anytime during the webinar, you can go ahead and ask those and we'll be gathering them and we'll answer them at the end of the formal presentation, the formal questions. We also have the link to our February webinar on axial flux integrated systems in power sports and recreation. So you've got a minute right now to register for that, or bookmark that link and register after the webinar. And also remember that this is a live event, and when we mess up or do something silly, and we probably will, just laugh along with us, and we'll try to keep those to a minimum. So first, I want to introduce our panel for the webinar. We're so thrilled to have every one of them with us. We have Steve Hornyak, who is the CEO of Turntide Technologies. We have Becky Schultz, the VP of Content for the Power Division of KHL Group, and she is also the Editor-in-Chief of Power Progress. We have Dan Carney, who is Senior Editor of Design News, and we have Sarah Jensen, who is Executive Editor of Power in Motion. So that's it for our housekeeping and our introductions, and we're going to get started. And Steve, we're going to send this first question to you. So as we look back on 2025, what, in your opinion, were the big trends that shaped the mobility market related to propulsion, electrification, OEM manufacturing, and anything else you'd like to touch on?
Sure. I think, without a doubt, the economics and benefits of electrification and not just electrifying everything is what's on top of mind for everyone. In other words, the trend has moved to the green on a company's balance sheet and P&L versus just supporting the environmental benefits at any cost. So we're also seeing a lot of hybrid-based applications, which are perfect for axial flux motors due to the size, power density, and ability to torque match fossil fuel motor. And hybridization, we're seeing it as a long-term solution and not just a stopgap. We're also seeing trends leveraging existing platforms that the OEMs have versus building ground-up applications. When you build a ground-up applications, you got to retool, remanufacture. It's a long, very, very expensive process. So we're seeing a lot of OEMs want to better take advantage of platforms that they have, which again put limitations on size, which is great for axial flux motors because of their smaller size and higher torque density. We can be much more flexible in all kinds of applications.
Excellent. So Becky, do you have anything to add to that?
I would say that I agree with Steve in terms of the trend towards especially hybridization. It seemed like for a time, hybrid systems were almost considered kind of the least desirable option for moving into electrification. It was kind of an all or nothing type of mentality. Now we're seeing a lot more OEMs looking to hybrid solutions that can help them to take advantage of existing technology that they are familiar with while enabling better fuel efficiency, emissions, the controls, certainly providing a lower cost solution for them. I think one of the things that has become ever more critical at this stage is the packaged solution, the ability to deliver a not just a single component that helps solve a problem, but a full package that allows for drop-in to existing footprints. As Steve said, the ability to take their a product that they have, the design that they already have, and to be able to drop in a solution is becoming ever more desirable to the OEMs as they move forward.
Excellent. And Dan, what about you?
Definitely, it was hybridization in 2025, and the aspect of it that I noticed the most was the embrace of plug-in hybrids and the value of having longer range plug-in hybrids. We saw more plug-in hybrids arriving with 50 miles of range, electric only, versus what was typically the norm before in the 25-mile range. And the longer ranges, I think, will encourage people to plug them in more frequently. That's been a problem, is that people haven't been plugging them in. But if you can plug it in overnight and get 50 miles on the charge, I think that'll motivate people to be more likely to do that. And then as well, we saw the announcements of sort of blurring the lines between plug-in hybrids and extended range battery EVs, where there's an onboard gas-powered generator. And so Scout Motors, for example, announced that 80% of the orders for their electric off-road vehicles are the extended range versions with the onboard gasoline engine.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. And Sarah, do you have any other items to add to that?
Sure. I would agree with what everyone has said so far. And, from my perspective, covering primarily the fluid power systems that are on a lot of vehicles, improving efficiency has really been, it's always been important, but it's been really emphasized more now with, move to hybrid and electric powertrains and vehicles. So there's a lot more, there's a increased need to improve the efficiency of, say, the hydraulic systems, which you didn't have to always necessarily worry about that as much before when they were running off an engine. And, you're to achieve that efficiency, you are seeing some replacement of hydraulics with electric technologies, but it's a lot more pairing the electric technologies with the hydraulics, like pairing an electric motor, running a hydraulic pump off of a hydraulic motor, like an axial flux motor, so you can get the better speed and control and efficiency out of that system, and kind of electrify the hydraulic system to help get some of those efficiency gains and other aspects that OEMs want out of their vehicles.
Fantastic. We'll hop on to the next question. So moving into 2026, Becky, we're going to come to you with this one first. What do you think are the big topics and trends that can shape the mobility market in the year ahead?
I think, as Sarah alluded, one of the things that we're definitely seeing is hybridization of even the hydraulic systems in vehicles and equipment. We're seeing a shift to electromechanical systems as well as electrohydraulic systems. And I think we're going to see that becoming even more prevalent as we move into 2026. I think there's just so much more efficiency that can be gained in terms of fuel efficiency, performance, and emissions reduction, that it just makes sense. And it's a fast way for OEMs to decarbonize, as opposed to some of the more complex technologies that might be applied. I think that we're seeing also a shift to technologies such as drive-by-wire systems and steer-by-wire systems, especially in some of the larger vehicles. It's kind of migrating from the smaller, from more of the commercial, consumer-oriented vehicles, automotive vehicles, into the more of the commercial applications. And so I think that's something else that we're seeing. And again, I think we're going to see a lot more demand for packaging of systems that, as Dan mentioned, more of a plug-and-play type of opportunity to take advantage of the existing footprint and be able to insert technology into the machines. And that will help to accelerate the adoption of electrification, not necessarily fully electric, but I think you're going to see elements of electrification coming into a lot more vehicles and equipment as we move forward in 2026.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dan, what about you?
Well, I think one of the reasons that we'll see electrification proliferating, as Becky said, is that we will see the rise of LFP batteries They're already the dominant battery chemistry in the Chinese market, and we're going to see that spread to the rest of the world because those batteries are getting more and more viable in terms of their performance, and their price is a lot more attractive. And maybe even more importantly, they don't use some of the problematic materials like cobalt that have ethical concerns and as well have complicated supply chains. And so if we can eliminate some of those risky elements that are used in the batteries, it'll definitely streamline the production and make it more practical, more feasible to electrify mobility.
Can I just jump in on that? One of the
Absolutely.
things that I think something that also is, as you mentioned, battery technology and changes in battery chemistry are going to be very significant for moving the industry ahead. We have heard recent reports of production versions of solid state batteries coming into play. I think that that is going to be, as we see those different technologies that offer greater efficiency, reduce the weight that is required in the equipment and vehicles, the amount of space requirement, it's definitely going to help make it more acceptable and easier for OEMs to move forward into that sphere.
Fantastic. And Sarah, what about you? What do you see in 2026?
I think I see, it's, not just in the electrification and hybridization space, but, kind of all over the industry, the use of data and connectivity to monitor the performance of systems, keep an eye on that battery pack, how much runtime do I have left? Are my systems performing as they're supposed to be? Do I need to perform some maintenance, be more proactive about that? There's a lot more integration of sensors and software in all the components, hydraulics, electric, like any system, and just getting that information and keeping machine vehicle owners informed of how things are performing, and making the best use of that vehicle or machine for whatever its purpose is. A lot of times it's for work, on a construction site or something. So just helping to keep people more productive, and also feeding into that efficiency aspect we've talked about a few times. If you can make sure you're getting as much use out of something as possible, and getting utilizing your energy the best you can in your vehicle. I think we're going to see a lot more in that area this coming year as technology has progressed in those areas.
Right. And OEMs are going to be responsible for making sure that technology is included in their systems, correct?
Yes, but they're also putting a little bit of that on they want their suppliers being able to provide some of that technology as well. I know it's a big focus area for a lot of people in the fluid power industry, because their OEM customers are looking for that kind of technology because their end users are looking for it. So I know it's a big focus area for all sides of the equation.
Thanks. And Steve, what do you see moving into 2026?
I would say agree with everything that's been stated, but what I want to amplify is just the speed of advancement of battery technology. Lighter, smaller, faster charging, higher performing batteries is opening up the market, whether it be full electrification or hybridization, or applications beyond what you would think about moving people. I mean, we're seeing a lot of traction, pun intended, a lot of traction in motors and applications beyond just consumer vehicles, right? So we're actually not focused on that part and segment of the market per se, but off-road, commercial, construction, marine, military. So lots of applications when you're combining the advances of the pure technology as well as advances in batteries. Being able to get the cost more in line from an ROI perspective, getting the weight more in line, and getting the speed of charging more in line is all helped facilitate advancing this segment.
Great, thank you. So Dan, I'm going to come to you with this one. There was a lot of discussion about the end of the U.S. federal tax credits for incentivizing EV purchases last year. With these credits gone, new questions are emerging about the clean energy propulsion market. What do you think will drive the adoption in 2026?
What will drive adoption in 2026 and beyond is what was the original motivating factor of electrification, and that's the inherent benefits of electric drive. The costs were an obstacle to that, and that's why we had those incentives and pulled forward some purchases prior to the expiration of those incentives. Edmunds.com estimates that we had 7.5% EV market share in the US in 2025, and that they estimate that it'll fall to 6% in 2026, partly because those purchases got pulled forward. But the inherent benefits of electrification are there, and as prices fall, that barrier drops and people will start embracing electrified vehicles. So I think the first step will be in 2026. We'll start seeing more of the affordable EVs, the Chevy Bolt, the Nissan Leaf, Slate's electric mini pickup truck, Ford's mini electric pickup truck. Those are going to be the kinds of vehicles that start driving mass adoption of electrification during 2026. And then hopefully the market will grow from there as we start to phase in advanced technologies like solid state batteries and axial flux motors and things like that to help bring the weight of the vehicles down, because after cost, weight is another issue with EVs. And if we can reduce the weight with smaller, lighter solid state batteries and smaller, lighter axial flux motors, then another couple of years we'll maybe be where we want to be.
And Dan, do you think the charging infrastructure will remain a barrier, or have we gotten at least a little better in that area?
We have definitely gotten a little better, and it keeps getting better. It's an incremental thing. It improves steadily, and then as battery technology improves and the software for managing it improves, it'll continue to improve incrementally. But I don't think there's going to be a magic wand that anyone's going to wave and solve that completely overnight, but it'll get better.
Great, thank you. Sarah, what do you think about this, and do you have anything to add?
I would agree with Dan. You really need to show the benefits, and how does that help somebody's ROI? What, like I said before, lots in some of these instances, like construction or agriculture equipment, it's being used for work, so they need to have a business case for that. When you electrify some of the systems and things, like again the hydraulics, sometimes there's opportunities to rethink system architectures where things are placed, or you might be able to eliminate some hydraulic hoses or other components, which can help from the OEM's perspective reduce their costs, which can trickle down potentially to the customer. It reduces the amount of components you might need, and just makes it integration of systems a little easier as well. So some of those discussions and benefits could help from the OEM perspective, and then potentially for the end user as well, and help make the case for both sides of things.
Perfect, thank you. And Steve, what about you?
I mean, it's interesting when you look at this, and I agree with Dan when he talks about the more offerings that are price competitive. So you always look at price and the benefit, and do people like it? Do people like using these types of vehicles? And if you haven't owned one, and I'm on my I guess third electric vehicle and one hybrid in the family, still have a gas burner as well, but it's just a better way to move things. I mean, it's more efficient, it's more effective. It is the torque is just crazy, and the maintenance is virtually zero compared to fossil fuel engines. So it is a better way to move things. What has been the hurdle in the past, and Dan nailed it, it's just been cost. It's been expensive to do, and those are coming in line. And as the price comes in line, as the fear of charging anxiety comes in line, or I'm going to use this for my runabout versus a long trip, long haul journey vehicle, I think you're going to see more and more people moving over into space, regardless of not having the tax credits anymore, because costs are coming in line and people are realizing the benefits of it. It's kind of addictive. I mean, if you've gotten one and driven an EV, it's very, very difficult to go back.
Yes. Awesome. And Becky, anything from you on this?
Sure. Looking specifically at the commercial vehicle side of things, one of the things that is for 2025, there was an anticipated pre-buy due to greenhouse gas emissions that are regulations that are expected to go into effect in 2027. As the administration changed, we saw a pullback in regulations, and there was a lot of uncertainty as to whether EPA 27 was going to move forward. That has been clarified in the courts as of November, and now there is the expectation that fleets will start looking at investing in more efficient technology, and this also lends a little more certainty to the OEMs who were not sure what direction to head in terms of their solutions for the market. Now they have that certainty in place. They know that they can potentially move forward with 2027 models that have more efficient technology that includes perhaps electrification or hybrid systems that help to propel that market. But I think in general for 2026, the advancements that we've already been talking about, the improved battery systems, better charging infrastructure, investment in solutions that help to ensure faster and more cost-effective charging rates, all of that, in addition to greater life cycle capabilities of the technology and cost-effectiveness of the technology is going to help drive electrification forward in the next 12 months and well beyond that.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we have definitely been seeing this trend a lot. Axial flux motors seem to have evolved from niche applications to more widespread adoption. And Steve, I'm going to send this to you first. In your mind, what changed with axial flux motors to make them more attractive to OEMs and the consumers in the mobility market?
Sorry, I was on mute. Apologize for that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My bad.
No, this was one of those things where we just laugh and keep going.
Well, I'm battling a cold, so I just want to make sure that that I don't interrupt at all with any sneezing. But axial flux motors have been around for a long time. They're not new to the market. They've always been a very high compact, high torque, incredible motor and option. But they've been more bespoke, hand-built, and which resulting in significantly more expensive than your traditional radial flux motors. So, the movement, and obviously we've done this at Turntide, moved to a scalable, componentized, highly configurable axial flux motor assembly that leverages patented automation, providing breakthroughs in value and performance, which kind of drives that cost down. It's not going to be cheaper than the equivalent in radial flux motors, but it doesn't have to be. But it's not double the price. You're looking at maybe 20 or 30% price premium to a traditional motor. But the fact that you can actually fit those in spaces that you can't fit the radial flux motors, plus the performance benefits, the torque benefits of that, and the lower weight benefits of that, has really opened up the market. So, we see that in addition to the need for smaller torque dense motors for hybrids. When you look at a hybrid engine, what you basically want to do is you want to take that kind of cavity that you've got for the motor, you want to shrink the motor, and that leaves a little bit of space. Well, in that little bit of space, you're going to have to fit the electrification component. Well, axial flux motors being wafer-like, like think of them as the size of kind of like a 25 or 35 pound plate that you see in a gym, or two of them put together, you can put those in line and they can torque match with the motor itself. So it's a perfect match for hybridization, inline hybridization and torque matching. Combining that with reduction in price of manufacturing, we're just going to see a tornado of growth in axial flux motors and axial flux motor deployments this year. In fact, we're predicting for Turntide alone, probably in excess of 500% year-over-year growth in volume, or even possibly more.
That's amazing. And you also mentioned lower maintenance, or I've heard you mention lower maintenance with axial flux motors versus radial.
Yeah, it's definitely it is lower maintenance, but I don't think that that's one of the major drivers. But there is a slight difference in maintenance. I think the weight factor, it is a lighter motor, and when you look at the weight of batteries, the weight of everything else, every ounce counts. So the fact that you've got smaller, you've got lower weight, and you have over time the ROI benefits of a slight premium in price far outweigh sticking with the traditional radial flux motor or having to re-architect your entire vehicle.
Great, thank you so much. And Becky, have you noticed this trend or have any info about this trend?
I don't know if I have a lot to add to what Steve mentioned about the trend, but I would say that I think that there's definitely an increase in the need for power dense, compact, weight efficient solutions in the market. As Steve mentioned, hybridization is eating up a lot of space within an existing product design. And so the OEMs, they are definitely looking for solutions that can help them to fit more into the same package, because otherwise they're going to have that much more cost in new product development. And so the ability to get that efficiency, increased efficiency, reduced size and space demand, and also reduce weight in the overall package required for electrification. I think that's going to be essential for a lot of OEMs going forward, as they're looking at trying to keep their equipment as cost effective for the end user as possible.
And Dan, what are your thoughts on axial flux motors?
Just to repeat what Steve had said about the manufacturing challenge, that it's a technology that doesn't companies don't have as much experience manufacturing in high volume as they do traditional radial flux motors. And in the electrified technology industry, just the requirements for manufacturing at scale are very high. And we've seen, for example, the recall in the Jeep 4xe because of their battery problem that resulted from a manufacturing flaw, just because it's challenging. And the more experience that you get, the better you'll be able to do it at volume at a reasonable cost. And there'll be the ability for axial flux motors to come down in cost as that experience grows. And as well, the packaging makes them very attractive. I think it's almost coincidental that axial flux motor is almost exactly the size and shape of a traditional hydraulic torque converter with an automatic transmission, and you can just drop it into that same space. And so you have no additional size there on the drivetrain side. Now you do still have to put the battery someplace, but it's a good solution.
And Sarah, what about you, especially around any hydraulic applications that you've seen or heard of?
I think from my perspective, I don't know that I have a whole lot more I can add on this particular that Becky, Dan, and Steve haven't already covered. But I think, again, just agreeing again, anything that's not going to take up a lot of space, but can provide the power that's needed, and provide similar performance that one might expect from a diesel or traditional diesel or gas powered machine. I think that's just going to help uptake of any technology like an axial flux motor.
Great. Great. So again, Sarah, I'm coming right back to you with this one, especially around fluid power. Can you discuss the vertical markets that are best suited for axial flux motors, and what might be the untapped verticals that represent new growth opportunities?
Sure. Well, I think, like, as we've discussed a few times, and I mentioned earlier, if you're wanting to try to do a hybrid setup or even go full electric, but you're still going to need those hydraulics in there, being able to, any vehicle or machine that's going to still rely on hydraulics, like an excavator or something like that, if you can drive the pump loops and other components with the axial flux motor, I think that's going to be beneficial. One market that kind of came to mind was work trucks. You have things like utility or bucket trucks, where there's been a lot of work that I've been seeing at trade shows over the last few years, where the truck needs to be stationary somewhere doing work, but not idle that engine, which causes a lot of energy and to be used, and noise and emissions. But if you can have a setup where maybe you're lifting that boom for the bucket truck with electric and not have to use the engine, and that still relies on there's a lot of hydraulics in that. If you can drive that with an electric motor and other technologies, then that can save a lot on an operational cost and cut down on noise and emissions, and help in general with those kind of that work that needs to be done. And so that's an application where I could see maybe there's some opportunities for the axial flux motor technology.
And Steve, what about you?
I think we are seeing a lot of applications in agriculture and construction. Exactly what Sarah's mentioning is that if there's a way to not constantly idle a motor and constantly burn fuel, leveraging electrification, where you can require some high torque that help drives the hydraulics, whether it be boom lifting or whether it be movement of a bucket, or oddly enough, we're seeing a lot of applications in street sweepers. There's globally, I'm blown away of how many companies manufacture street sweepers, and we're engaged with a ton of them. So there's lots of great applications out there that you may not think about. I think the other vertical is military, and in military, you have a need for speed, and you have a need for being silent and undetectable. So a diesel motor is very detectable. It creates heat, it creates noise, whereas electric motors can move things very quickly, very silently, and with no heat footprint. So we're seeing a lot of hybrid-based applications for things that move within military applications globally as well.
Excellent. And Becky, what about you?
I think all of the markets that have already been mentioned, but I think marine is also another application. There is an industry sector where, in a lot of cases, they're looking for hybrid or fully electric solutions, especially for import applications where there are restrictions on emissions and noise coming into those areas. So very often you're using a diesel engine, perhaps for while you're at full speed, but perhaps once you start approaching the port, you're moving into an electrified mode so that you are reducing those concerns, that the environmental concerns as you're in those more sensitive areas. Something that comes to mind as Steve was talking was also waste industry, potentially something like a refuse truck. Where you do see it idling a lot of the time, but there are functions that need to be still managed during pickup of refuse. So there are certainly applications like that, in addition to things like the mining sector, the construction sector, the agricultural sector. There's certainly a lot of applications. I think it's just a matter of the industry becoming increasingly familiar with the technology and recognizing the benefits that are available from it.
Excellent. And Dan, do you see any untapped verticals?
You bet. Within the passenger car market, the segment that could emerge that would use electric motors as in-wheel motors, eliminating the entire drivetrain and putting an electric motor at each corner of the vehicle and freeing up all the space in the platform. It's been something that's been predicted and forecast for years. It hasn't come to fruition. Lordstown Motors got close before they went out of business. one of the challenges with in-wheel motors is that the motor then is unsprung mass, which is undesirable. But with an axial flux motor that weighs less, it makes it more practical to put the motor in the wheel and have the unsprung mass there. It's not as much of a problem. So I would see eventually the emergence of EVs that go with wheel motors instead of central motors to drive them, and axial flux is perfect for that.
And Sarah, what about, as we started the question with you, never mind, you've already answered. So that was our last formal question. We're going to have a Q&A, so if you have not already asked your questions, please get them in. You should have my email address in your webinar invitations, but if you have any ideas for webinar topics, we'd love to hear them, so send them to me. So the first thing I've come up with is, what are you most excited about in 2026?
Me personally,
Everybody, we'll start with you. In the industry.
I can go a lot of ways with that one, Lori. No, listen, I joined Turntide, gosh, about 18 months ago, and I was super excited about the opportunity to, what I'll say, commercialize, componentize, and mass produce axial flux motors and axial flux motor based EDUs. I saw that as a definite opportunity, a market trend, and a missing component in this space, particularly in a water glycol cooled, where there's a player out there that kind of focuses on high performance oil cooled. I saw it as a massive opportunity. So me personally, I'm looking at it and I'm super excited because it's working. We're seeing a lot of demand, we're seeing a lot of market pull, and we're seeing a lot of validation for the ROI, their performance, and I would say the ability to fit axial flux motors in a number of different applications that we dreamt about. We're seeing it now come in reality. In fact, we have a program, can't announce it yet, but we've got a program with, I'll say, one of the largest manufacturers of vehicles in the world, and one of the largest companies in the world, for commercial vehicles for inline hybrid. So, that is going through testing this year as well. So, I'm super excited about seeing that, kind of having this vision of what's going to happen, what could happen, setting a foundation, and then just watching it take off. So, that's my take on it.
Great. Becky, what are you most excited about this year?
Well, I'm excited because I think that we're going to see some really fun technologies being shown in the marketplace. We saw some really interesting things come out of bauma last year, which, for those who aren't familiar with bauma, it's basically the world's largest construction show that's hosted every 3 years in Germany. That show, we saw things as innovative as drop-in, full packaged electric solutions, systems that essentially are packaged like a motor that are capable of being dropped directly into the machine. Perkins was one of the companies that showed that at bauma, showed it in an actual prototype machine that they're partnering with OEMs to develop. I think we're going to see more and more solutions like that coming into the marketplace that are going to further enable OEMs to almost immediately move into electrification in a much more accelerated fashion. I'm excited to see what we find out at ConExpo coming up, which is basically the equivalent here in North America.
Yes.
I think that it's going to be it's just an exciting time because we're seeing so many innovations coming through in terms of battery and charging technologies. Autonomy is becoming much more prevalent in the various markets that we're looking at. We're seeing actual on-road testing of autonomous vehicles happening as we speak. I think that there's a lot of innovation that's going on in the market, and it's just very exciting to watch.
Dan, what about you?
I'm excited about the prospect of the Slate $25,000 pickup truck. I want to get one. The sub $30,000 Nissan Leaf is a great value, but I think Slate has really found something with their stripped down, simplified vehicle. And you might wonder what's the relationship between an inexpensive vehicle like that and axial flux motors, and it's that a rising tide lifts all the boats. The more EVs that are on the road, the more infrastructure there will be to support them, and therefore the more demand there will be for vehicles that use axial flux motors as well.
Excellent. And Sarah, what about you?
I'm just excited to see kind of how the technology continues progressing and how the different ways OEMs and system suppliers continue to bring technologies together. You know, something, again, covering the fluid power side, hydraulics, it's always seen as this dirty, stagnant, not very innovative industry at times, but that it's definitely not the case. And with a lot of the hybridization and electrification, it's brought a lot of new opportunities for the industry to rethink how they set up systems, drive the hydraulics, and various things. It's definitely brought a lot more intrigue and interest to the industry. And the people in the industry are always saying, like, it's an exciting time to be in fluid power and in all the industries we all cover, because there is just so much going on and so many different and unique ways to go about doing things. And so I'm just excited to see how it keeps progressing and evolving. It's already changed so much in my decade plus career so far, so covering all of it. So it'll be interesting to see how it keeps going.
Excellent. Well, Steve, I'm going to direct this to you, but if anyone would like to weigh in after Steve, that would be great. This a new question that just popped in. What makes axial flux motors more expensive than radial flux? Shouldn't they ultimately be cheaper because they require less materials?
Yes, sort of. But one of the biggest cost factors for axial flux motors is the windings and the various configurations of the windings. And to date, there has, that's been a more manually intense process and very precise process in order to get that done in a manner that it's effective and efficient. Whereas radial flux are more attuned to doing simplified automation. So, we have actually solved that, or in process of solving that, with a patented process that allows for the automation of incredibly complex axial flux motor windings, which will radically decrease the human labor costs associated with putting them together. So, and people do, I get that question a lot. They're looking at it saying, why the heck is this that more money? And that's one of the main differences between the two.
Excellent. Anyone else want to weigh in? Okay. So Becky, you mentioned the integrated systems, and I wanted to give the other panelists a chance to weigh in on that, because we are also seeing a trend of integrating a system so that an OEM has one thing they drop in and they're not dealing with different suppliers. And, so what trends are you seeing along those lines that Becky mentioned, if you are seeing those kinds of trends? And Steve, I'll start with you and work down our panelists if they'd like to add more.
Apologize. Let somebody else start for a second, please. I'll go second.
Absolutely. Who wants to talk about integrated drop-in systems?
Sure, I can say that at the Munich Mobility Show this year, we saw a lot of displays from companies like Bosch and ZF, companies like that were showing exactly that. Magna has shown a lot of that as well, where they'll have a system that is on their booth that is ready to just bolt right in as a plug-and-play replacement for existing systems.
Yeah, and again, apologize. I was about to go through a sneeze, so I didn't want to do that mid-sentence. So
fine.
Thank you
for joining us.
I did apples, apples, and it stopped. So but we're seeing a componentized but prepackaged EDU. So in other words, when I say componentized, being able to configure, I'll say EDUs axial flux-based motor EDUs, but also in the future, if you have an issue with one, not having it to the fact that you've got to pull the whole thing out and replace the whole EDU, that you can actually replace components. So having these whole integrated EDUs that are out of box that you can drop in place, but also having them that they're designed and optimized for future-based performance of maintenance or other. So we're seeing a big trend towards that. Expect lots of announcements from Turntide in the area of axial flux-based EDUs. I'll kind of give you a preview on that. And having, being able to integrate, I'll call it the motor controller along with the motor, and then third-party gearboxes, drivetrains, and being able to get somewhere where that's pre-tested, pre-known, prepared, and being able to drop it in can literally take 6 to 12 months off of the development cycle for projects. So we're seeing massive benefits in that. And in fact, we're realizing those benefits as we speak in the field with speed to market.
Excellent. Anyone else have anything to add?
I'd just add that one of the big things is that it's reducing complexity for the OEMs. It's definitely helping to allow them to focus on the bigger picture of new product development, the issues that they really should be concentrating on, because they're builders of machines, and that's what they should be concentrating on, and not on necessarily the little things that are that they need to be able to implement into those machines to make them function. And sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to jump on you there.
No, it's all good. I was just going to add, like, from the fluid power side, you have a lot of system companies that are system integrators. They have that fluid power experience, and they're learning a lot of the electrification technologies to help bring those together. And so that OEMs, they don't have to focus on it. They can worry about the other things that they're experts in, as Becky said. And a lot of the small to medium-sized OEMs, they just don't have those engineering resources in-house to do that kind of work. So these system integrators, they can, use their different areas of expertise to bring the systems together and provide a fully fledged system that is easier to integrate and helps the OEM to move along that electrification path, however they choose to do so.
Excellent. This question may be a little interesting, and it probably is for Steve, but if anyone else wants to weigh in, please do so. After the success with the UK rolling stock supply of traction batteries, how is the industry outside of the UK reacting? Is there much demand or interest? And we could also give this person an answer later if we don't have an answer.
I honestly don't have a very good answer for that. I apologize.
Okay. We'll answer that later. That's why we have them, and we will get with you later and we'll email you an answer. This one is very Turntide specific. So Steve, I'm going to point it to you. But generally you guys can answer this. What problems do customers still underestimate that Turntide ends up solving for them?
I think part of the underestimation is the fact that even with prepackaged EDUs and already paired motors and motor controllers, there is tuning that has to happen, right? You don't just drop these things in and off they go, and they're optimized the second you put them in. So I think that there's an underestimation of the fact that you've got to, optimize the VCU, the vehicle control unit, with the motor control unit, with optimizing battery, with optimizing the motor, with optimizing how it's being controlled by the motor controller. So you've got to get these components, even if they come prepackaged in an EDU, you still have to pair that up with the VCU. It takes some time. Now, that time is shrunk from, I would say, months to weeks, but that is still something that companies like Turntide, or even some of the system integrators provide those types of services, because we and they have done it over and over and over again. Whereas it might be your first time doing it, I would say, look, to be more efficient and effective, raise your hand and we and our partners can help accelerate getting this this awesome package into a high performance beast for you very quickly.
Great. Anyone else want to add anything?
I'll just throw out there, I think, and I'm probably going to sound like I've been paid to say this, but I think one of the things that it seems to be a predominant part of conversations that I've had is that the need to actually have a really good conversation with your suppliers, OEMs needing to be able to communicate really effectively what the application is. What are the expectations? What they really need to get from what solution and what problem they have? How do you communicate that most effectively to ensure that when you're working with a partner, and that's what a lot of companies are becoming, they are becoming development partners in the process. You need to really help them better understand what it is that you require from them. What are the problems that you are trying to solve, and not just what component do I need. I think that that's a really essential part of product development, just being willing to share that kind of information so you get what really is going to be most effective for your own products, as well as that will solve the problems that your customers have as well.
And I will say, we did not pay Becky to say that, but that's one thing that our apps engineers really work at, is partnering with the engineers at the OEMs to make sure that it's hand-holding, helping whatever they need to try to get them through the tuning and making sure that everything is operating as it should be. And so, yes, we fully agree with that, and appreciate you saying that without any money exchanging hands. And does anyone else
I'll bill you later, Lori.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add to that specific question? And I assume not, since it was very turntide specific.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was our last question. We really appreciate Becky, Sarah, Dan, Steve. Thank you so much all for joining us. Please remember to register for the February webinar. We hope we'll see you all there, and have a great Tuesday, and thanks again for joining us, attendees.
Thanks.
Okay.